Hello! So, I get a lot of questions from people all the time, and as many of you well know, I can't always answer all of them. So, sometimes I try to put a bunch into a Q&A video, but a lot of the questions I get aren't answerable in a quick, tongue-in-cheek kind of way. Some of them require a longer, more thoughtful response. So, I decided that every now and then, I will take the time to answer just one of those questions in a single video. Really give it the time and attention it deserves. Like a homemade bread that needs space to prove all on its own. Some of the questions might be about my own experiences, some of them might be more general advice. I'm gonna keep them all anonymous out of concern for privacy and safety, and sometimes I might paraphrase or combine questions if they're similar. And this is very important to note, I am not a medical professional or an actual expert in anything. I'm just a video blogger telling you my opinion based on my own lived experiences and things I've learned along the way. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt and maybe some smoked paprika because that is just delicious. And know that I do not speak for the entire community of any community that I'm a part of, whether that's trans people or bisexual people or Harry Potter fans or waffle makers or even YouTubers. Just like John and Hank say on their podcast, what I'm saying should be regarded as dubious advice. Very dubious. I've already got an arsenal of questions, but please feel free to always send more. You can hit me up on any social media. I'm Jack is not a bird on most things, or you can even email me, address below in that box that sits under the YouTube video that people ignore most of the time. But with all that out of the way, let's dive into the first Ask Jack question. When you were in the process of figuring things out, did you ever feel like your dysphoria was a product of experiencing misogyny and gender normative expectations that you had to work through instead of transitioning? I'm pretty sure I'm trans, but this voice at the back of my head loves to be like, no, you just have to work through your issues with being female. A lot of feminist thought supports this idea, but I know in my heart it probably isn't true. Did I ever feel like that when I was in the process of figuring things out? Absolutely. I got this from both sides of the coin. Like, I had a lot of internalized misogyny growing up because I didn't like being perceived as and treated like a girl. But then when I got older, I got really like rah about feminism, and it made me kind of sad to be leaving that tribe, so to speak. So like, as a kid and teenager, I would get the title of feminist thrust upon me because I would rebuke traditional female roles. I would get up in arms about being assumed to be the decorator or the chore doer in mixed gender groups just because I was perceived to be a girl. So people would interpret my rebel stance as feminism. But truthfully, it was not coming from a place of being a feminist at all. I mean, I never gave a second thought to whether women should be expected to do those things. I just knew that I shouldn't have to do those things, which is super problematic. My dysphoria, like many transmasculine people's dysphoria, led me to be pretty misogynist, to be honest. But thanks to positive feminist role models and some actual education on gender, I was able to see how wrong I had been and start standing up for women for reasons of equality and fighting for oppression, not because I didn't want to get stuck cleaning up after a group project. The thing I experienced though, and everyone is different, was that no matter how much of a feminist I grew to be, no matter how great as a group I generally think women to be, no matter how much I love girl power and Riot Girl, and I want to invest in the education and futures of girls, despite all of that, it still didn't feel right for me. Like, if I had issues with being female because of societal expectations, those had been worked through. I theoretically would be proud of being a woman. But the thing is that I'm not. No matter how awesome women are, I am not one of them. And the things that I loved seeing in others didn't feel right for me. Like, these are more shallow examples, but I love women's fashion. But the items I loved always felt wrong on me. Like, whenever I would put them on, it wouldn't be like how I imagined it in my head. I'm sorry to say there's no secret checklist or announcement that's made telling you that yes, you are definitely trans, and here is what kind of trans you are. Like, you don't get a letter in the mail saying you have been accepted to Transworth School of Queerness and Gender Nonconformity, and then you get sorted into Griffin Fluid or Raven Femme and Demi Puff. Figuring out if you're trans and what that means for you is all part of your own journey. You know, maybe for you it is just part of coming to terms with being female and everything that comes along with that. But if, like me, you can come to terms with what that would mean in general, but it's still not right for you, maybe that's a sign. You know, like, sometimes, even though I still listen to Beyonce's Run the World and get a bit of FOMO wishing that I could be one of the people it's about, I know I'm not one of them, and that's okay. I get a buttload of male privilege in exchange, and I can't have my cake and eat it too. And this is getting into another topic, sort of, but we as trans men, like, we definitely have to let women have their spaces and voices without infringing on them. I think working through your discomfort with feminism and female roles as they relate to you and how you relate to women is really important for trans or questioning people who are female assigned at birth so that we can think more deeply about women's challenges. So yeah, I did have to work through a ton of my own resistance to gender normative expectations and internalized misogyny as I was figuring out my identity. Working through those, I believe, made me a better ally to women, but it also helped me be even more certain that I am a trans man, eventually. Anyways, when you're trying to figure out your identity and like what to do with that information, thinking through things like this is great, but you can also get to a place of overthinking. So I strongly encourage everyone to find other queer or trans people you can talk to and maybe start experimenting with your expression or behavior in little ways to see how that feels. Thinking is great. Thinking is my favorite, but you gotta get out of your own head a bit too to start moving forward. I hope some of that was helpful in some way to some people. Again, take everything that I say, like everything else that you hear, with a grain of salt. If you have questions that you would like to be answered in a future Ask Jack, you can leave them below or hit me up on pretty much every social media platform as Jack is not a bird. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.